Hey guys, I am Game Advisor and welcome back to another Icarus update video. Today we'll be going over the week 16 update, Scorched and Frozen. This update has a lot of new things, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. First up is the fact that the game has new enemies in the form of scorpions. I am really excited for these. I'm sure they'll do some poison damage along with some other things, but they just seem absolutely awesome as an idea. It gives you a creature that wouldn't naturally be found considering these are essentially giant scorpions. You can even see them here. They're actually pretty large in comparison to what a normal scorpion size would be, which would normally just get crushed under your foot. So I'm more than happy to start seeing some more unique enemies within the world of Icarus. We do know that these scorpions will drop unique consumables that you can craft with, along with new food consumables that come with their own unique buff as well. This also does go off of the new expanded meat system, so they're going to probably have their own special type of meat that they give, in other words, just like every animal does in its current state, depending on what type of family it's from, whether it's a game animal, a small animal, a predator, or a large predator. Now they also mention here that the Concealment Recovery mission is the new mission they're introducing into the game. This mission is going to introduce you to the idea as to how this new meat works and kind of get you up to speed with it. There's really not a lot to say about the mission as we're going to be doing a mission guide on it, but hey, it's something new. I'm always happy to see new missions in Icarus, new challenges, and new ways about dealing with the game. There's some more stuff later on which I'm really excited for, one of which is going to be the temperature system. So basically what they've done here is they've made the desert significantly more dangerous than it previously was to bring it up to par with how the snow and ice biomes were. If you didn't already know that, that's just kind of a thing where the desert biomes really weren't too much of an issue for most people, but the snow biomes were significantly more difficult. So now they should be a little bit more balanced out. They also now have an internal heat temperature as well as an external heat temperature. This means that it's going to change the way that you deal with temperatures, meaning that you probably won't be able to just put on a suit of armor and immediately have the resistance you need to deal with the weather. They have also set up and balanced out the game a little bit so that you cannot be 100% completely immune to the weather. There was a trick in the past where you could get a buff or two, plus have the exotic armor or some other armor type on, and then you could be completely immune to the effects of that biome, depending on which biome and which armor you were going for. The point here is that this makes it so that is no longer possible. You can no longer be 100% resistant, but I'm pretty sure you can still probably get to around 90 to 99%. But either way, I'm glad to see it. I'm sure, like I said, with the internal temperature, it would work like if, say, you're in the cold biome and you need to go ahead and warm up. You'd have to stand by a campfire long enough to heat up the surrounding area and then also heat up your internal body, just giving you kind of a separate temperature gauge that monitors your internal temperature rather than just purely having, hey, I put on a suit of armor, magically I'm warm instantaneously. Along with these new temperature changes, they've also introduced ice water into the game. Ice water, it seems like it's basically just going to be a way that you can cool yourself down when you're in the desert. Again, glad to see it. It looks like it's just made in your thermos. I've barely ever used it, so maybe this will give the thermos a good reason to be used. And just to talk a little bit more about the desert biome debuffs, the new debuffs seem to be called Heat Exhaustion and Heat Stroke. Again, we're going to have to do some testing with these, but they should be some unique buffs that add some unique twists to how you have to deal with the actual desert biome. Now, following that, we have some new quality of life user interface stuff here. This is just little things that kind of are going to make your life a bit easier. So for an example, we have things like the solo talent tree being more clear as to whether or not it is currently active in game. This should help make it more clear for players whether or not it's currently on or not, meaning if you're in a mission, but say somebody else has dropped in at some point in time during that mission, maybe it's on, maybe it's not. People seem to be very unclear about that. So this should go ahead and clear it up for you. They've also added labels so that you know whose drop pod is whose and you don't just run to whichever one you see first. They've also better explained how respawning works within the game. They've also better explained how recovering your gear and death penalties work, plus added a new handy link to the patch notes so that you can directly see what they are via the title screen in-game. All of these are nice little additions, but I don't think any of them were the end of the world, but hey, I'm not complaining, I'm glad to see it. It's always nice to have quality of life updates. Now, this is honestly probably one of the bigger things aside from adding a new creature to the game that I wanted to talk about. And that's the fact that they're going to be changing how drop timers work. They have not fully worked out how this is going to happen yet, but they did give us an example of what they're talking about. Basically, they're going to make it so the real world time and the mission time are two separate timers. The way they explained it is they can't really have every mission be lasting for literally ever. So instead, they've decided to set it up in such a way that, there's this timer that you have, but sometimes it feels like it's way too long or way too short, and they feel like that's not working out. So the example they gave us is you might say have a 90-day real life timer, but have a much shorter in-game timer. This ensures that if you do give up on the mission and leave your character in there and just stop playing the game, they can still delete that save file after a while so that they can make room on their server for more players and it doesn't create lag. But because there's an in-game separate timer, that in-game separate timer might say be 3 hours or 6 hours to complete a challenging mission. This will give us a sense of urgency, I feel like, when we're going to be doing missions a little bit more, and I'm glad to see that, as missions really don't need to have 7-day and 14-day timers, but they only have them because they do take a while. They're not supposed to be that difficult and all those other things. But personally, I just think this is a good thing to have in this kind of play style of the game. I know a lot of players may not like the whole short mission timer thing where you have to complete it in X amount of hours. I personally am actually 100% for this. I think this is what the game is based around that makes it different from other survival games. I want to see them add this in. I want to see this be a well-implemented system, though, that doesn't make players feel like if they don't come back to their computer this week or if they go on vacation, they might lose their character. That's never a fun thing to do. So I'm definitely glad they might be extending the overall real-life day timer, but shortening those mission timers and giving them just separate ones. So when you're in-game, you have one timer, and when you're out of game, you have a separate timer. The only thing I will say is that I really don't want this to take away from some of those building up missions and make it feel even more so for new players, like, hey, I didn't even get time to build my house, or I built it up and then it just got deleted. I don't really like that. And I think that's one thing that has to be really clarified to new players, that this game is not meant for you to build this custom, really fancy, cool new house. It's more so intended for you to build exactly what you need for that mission, complete the mission in a somewhat timely manner, and move on. So I think as the game gets harder, that should somehow be communicated. Maybe it can be done via the in-game narrator through like the little tutorial missions at the beginning. I don't know. I just think this needs to really be clarified, because a lot of players seem to get upset that their mission goes ahead and disappears after, 7 to 30 days, or even say 90 days. And they're like, hey, I wanted to build all the way up and now I can't do that. Well, if you only got a 6-hour in-game timer, the whole point is that you're supposed to try to see how fast you can get to what you absolutely need to complete the mission, which creates a sense of difficulty. So again, I think this is a really good idea to separate these two timers. However, with that being said, I do think that the idea of the game just needs to be a little bit better communicated, because a lot of players seem to be upset at this mechanic and not truly understand why this is what makes Icarus unique and makes it better than other games in some ways. Now, I'm just going to go over a few things down here in the changelog. There's a lot to really talk about here, but I don't want to go too crazy in depth with this. Some things they've done is increased the growing and harvesting rewards of coffee, tea, cocoa, and gorse. I don't know if I'm saying that word right, but either way, it's just nice because these things really weren't usually worth growing, so now it should encourage you to do so. They've made it so the flashlight can also now be attached to your light slot, which is something I think a lot of people have wanted. They've also changed the way it works a little bit, so I'm glad to see that too. They've also improved the flashlight lighting visuals, which I'm glad to see because beforehand it really wasn't that great. And then finally, this last thing here at the bottom, I really want to make sure we mention here. And that's that they made it so that Tethered AI will now regenerate health when returning to their tether point. This was a big issue for doing certain boss battles and different other things like that, so I'm definitely glad they've implemented this. It sounds like basically this is going to work the same way it does in a MOBA or basically any other game when there's a leashed enemy, meaning an enemy that runs at you, says, hey, I'm too far away, and then runs back. And what this is going to do is make it so that they start regenerating health when they get tethered back to their tether point. So I'm glad they have it. It should fix some of these just a little bit weird boss encounters like the mammoth one and make it a little bit more balanced. You can now also cook crispy bacon inside the potbelly stove. And then there is a lot of other things they mention in here, but we don't want to waste all of your guys' time. There's a lot of unique little things like water plots now only consuming 15 water instead of 100, which is always great. But again, these aren't really big game changers. I just wanted to talk about some of the things I found most interesting. I'll let you guys go ahead and go over the patch notes yourself. You can check these out on the Steam forums, or you can check them out right before you launch the game in the little news page. But either way, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm Game Advisor, and make sure to like and subscribe for more Icarus content. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.